Welcome to session 2 of our Teen Yoga series. So we are just going to begin our practice today, taking a moment to kind of pause and check in. So if you would like to sit or lie down, whatever is comfortable for you, we're going to do a little counting breath. Last week we explored easy breath, where we inhale 5, exhale 5. So for today, we're going to just start to notice what our counts are like for our breath. So when you find yourself in a comfortable position, feel free to close your eyes. Just let your breath come naturally. And as you do, start to pay attention to the counts, to how long you naturally inhale and naturally exhale. And then if you are comfortable doing so, we're going to try to match those. And they might match naturally, but if it works for you, so say you inhale for a count of 3, we're going to try to exhale that count of 3. So we're going to try to find balance between our inhale and exhale. So let's go ahead and do one more cycle of that, finding the pace that works for you. And then as you finish that exhale, just take a brief little pause, allow yourself to kind of check in gently, see how you're feeling. And that's going to kind of be our breath practice for this week. We're going to incorporate another counting breath later. So we're going to talk a little more this week about the chakras. Last week we focused on our root chakra and we talked about foundations. And this week we're going to move it into our sacral chakra, or where we'll think about space kind of between the hips, just below the belly button. That's kind of our center of creativity. So some of the yoga practices that help to keep that chakra in balance or in its best state are breath work. Finding a sense of connection, so working with others, being around others, our sense of creativity, whether you are actively creating something or just kind of in the process of thinking about creativity. Movement, any kind of movement is good. Specifically, we think about flowing movement, and water is also a nice one. And if you want to think about that aligning with the ability to kind of counter like the cool, dry air, maybe like warm water or floating, or like we said, kind of flowing movements can accompany that as well. So there is just kind of a picture I found of some creativity, and I'm going to offer you a journaling experience to try to find that as well. And I've had several parents and teens just request some tools to help with anxiety. And that's going to come into play. We're going to talk about the nervous system here in just a moment. So we're going to work on some tools here, and you'll get a copy of these in your follow-up email as well. But we're just going to start with some things that might be not helpful. I think everyone is aware of what anxiety is, what anxiety feels like. And we are going to have times where we're anxious. I think it's helpful to start to notice what is perhaps a trigger for you. And then to also know how we can counter those triggers to bring ourselves back into resilience and into the state that we'd like to be in. So some things that don't necessarily help with anxiety is when we're sedentary, we're not moving, intentionally trying to stop anxious thoughts. No one ever calmed down by being told to calm down. We breathe shallow and hyperventilate. That causes anxiety. It's one of the reasons we practice breath work in yoga. A lack of sleep, unhealthy food choices, allowing ourselves to be inundated with negative people, social media that's not healthy, the use of drugs or alcohol, watching horror movies or intense, violent things over and over, and isolating ourselves, not talking about how we feel, not approaching others that can help us when we need help. So sometimes we can indulge in those things, and it's okay because we know that we're going to come back into that state of balance. But too much of any of it can definitely be a trigger for anxiety. Some ways we can help with anxiety: daily exercise, any kind of movement's healthy. Yoga is a great tool, practicing mindful breathing, even if that's all we do for our yoga practice. Becoming aware of our thoughts, just kind of noticing them, and it can help to express them by journaling or writing. Focusing on one thing at a time as opposed to allowing ourselves to try to do multiple things at once. Spending time with animals, going outside in nature, trying to get a good sleep routine, listening to music that makes us happy or is upbeat, and carving out time to create, because creativity is an important part of helping us to feel like whole. Art, food, dance, music, crafts, new talents. There's a lot of ways to be creative, and we all have different abilities to find that. And it's important, even when we do our creativity regularly, to keep it fresh and new, and to allow ourselves to create just for the sake of creating, not because we have to for any other purpose. So we are going to dive into our nervous system today, just a little bit. There's a lot more we can cover, and we will continue to cover in it, but I just want to talk briefly about our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. And I think these are terms that are becoming a lot more common in everyday life. So our sympathetic nervous system is associated in yoga with our inhale. It's kind of the gas pedal, the go. It can be stress, but it's also part of function. It helps us to get up, to ride a bike. It's our fight or flight system. A lot of us are familiar with that as well. It's kind of that go power. And it balances with our parasympathetic nervous system. So when they're in balance, we're doing really well. They're both functional and useful. But we are in a time where a lot of us tend to get stuck in that sympathetic state. And so we have to really work to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our break, our rest, our digest, our opportunity for our bodies to repair and recover, our chance to find sleep. So it's just kind of good to note when we might be out of balance with one or the other, and to try to bring them back into the healthier state. So one of the reasons that we talk about the nervous system is we're going to do a little practice here today. I'm going to go ahead and take my glasses off. You can do this seated, or you can do it lying down. We're going to start just by focusing on moving the eyes without anything else moving. So I kind of like to place one hand on my chin, otherwise my head wants to turn. So we're just going to go ahead and let everything stay in the direction it's in, but let our eyes move just as far to the right as they can. And then we'll bring the eyes back to center. I always like to blink a little bit. And then we'll let the eyes by themselves move just as far left as they can. And then we'll bring them back to center. Blink a few times here. So as long as we're comfortable with that practice, and as always, just doing whatever feels good for you today. So we're going to move into what we call the basic exercise. And this is what I was saying we can do from a seated position or lying down. We're just going to let our hands kind of rest on the back of our head. And we're going to keep everything still here. So this helps us kind of open our hearts and create space for nice big breaths. But we are going to keep everything still and let just our eyes move as far right as they can. And sometimes this can trigger our parasympathetic nervous system. And sometimes you'll notice that trigger with something. I tend to yawn. Sometimes people yawn, or they have a desire to cough or to swallow. And then we'll bring the eyes back to center, blink a few times. And then we are going to stay in the same position and let just the eyes move as far left as they can. And then eyes coming back to center, blink a few times. Maybe just resting the hands gently on the lap or even at the heart center. A couple breaths here, just kind of reestablish base here. So we're going to go from here into our movement practice. We're going to do a little bit with that before we start. So just being mindful of what works for you. I'm going to switch my camera around a little bit. I'm actually going to push my chair way back a bit towards the back because I'm going to come back to it when we move into our Shavasana practice. If you have plenty of space to move, great. If you don't, just kind of try to make it work as best as you can. If you want to get up and shift around, kind of a good time to do so. I'll grab the camera. So the first thing we're going to do is coming into that practice with the eyes here. So I'd like you to go ahead and just kind of plug your feet into the floor with that nice, strong, stable base. And then you can watch me first. This is kind of the pre-test. So we're going to bring our right arm out in front, kind of plug it in, and then rotating as far to the right as you can. And I'm going to go ahead and just look over my right hand and kind of mark a spot on the wall. So I know where I comfortably go with my right hand. And then come back to the front, let that go, shake it out. And then left arm. We bring it forward, kind of plug the shoulder in, feet stay grounded. We're going to rotate as far to the left as we can. And then getting that mark on the wall for the left side. And then we'll come back to center, shake it out a little bit. Let's take a nice breath in and exhale. All right, so this is where the work kind of starts to come in. So we're going to bring that right arm back out in front. We're going to rotate to our points. And as we rotate to our point, what we're going to do is let everything in the body stay still. And just our eyes are going to look as far to the left as they can. We'll hold that for like 10 to 15 seconds. I'll let you know when we're done. And then blink a few times, come back to face the front. Go ahead and lift and lower the shoulders, big breath in. Exhale as we let it go. And we'll switch this to the left side. So we're gonna bring the arm out in front, plug it in. We're gonna rotate to that stopping point. And then everything in the body stays still except the eyes. You're gonna let just our eyes look as far to the right as they can. We'll go ahead and blink a few times. Turn back to face the front. Shrug the shoulders. We're going to take a big breath in. Exhale as we let that go. And then our pose test. So we're going to see if we got any better range of motion from that movement. So we'll bring that right arm out in front. Plug the shoulder in. Rotate as far to the right as you can go. See if you moved at all. Come back to center. We'll do the same with the left. Extend the arm. Plug it in. Rotate as far to the left as you can. And then back to center. So there's a lot of reasons why that works. We're just telling our brain a different story. And one of the ways I heard this weekend, I really kind of like, when we get stuck in that fight or flight, you can think about almost like an animal tracking its prey, or if something is aware of danger. The eyes stay connected to the rest of the body. Where the rest of the body goes, the eyes go. So when we start to separate those again, we can move ourselves back out of that sympathetic state and into our parasympathetic state, reminding our body to rest, digest, recover, slow down. So that's why there's a difference there. You'll get a video of that in the follow-up. And of course, you can always rewind if you want to do it again or try that practice again. So now we're going to move into our yoga and some movement here. I'm going to shift my camera down just a little bit so my feet are a little more visible. So last week we talked about foundations, and we talked a little bit about creating a mantra, just some words that we use that accompanied our breath. So when we breathed in, we added a phrase, and then when we would breathe out, we changed that. So it could be as simple as breathe in, breathe out. You are welcome to add that mantra to create a new word for you this afternoon. But do bear in mind, we're going to come back into those foundations, into rooting our feet into the earth, because that's where we started, and we're going to continue to just kind of build on that. So we're going to come into kind of a wider stance here. Like I said, we're focusing a little more on our hips today. So a lot of us carry tension and tightness in our hips. Hips and shoulders are just one of those places that people are like, man, I'm just feeling tight. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling anxious. So we're going to work on creating some space there and offering ourselves some tools. So as you get a little warmer, kind of depending on what you have been doing and where you are at, as you warm, you might decide you want to widen your stance a little bit just because you start to feel a little more space moving into the body, just like any other warm up. But as we come into what we call sunflower pose, you can think about kind of sweeping your hands down, open the knees gently, and then with our inhale, we let the arms sweep tall. So you can almost think of this as like the sides of a sunflower spreading wide. And one of my trainers also talks about being a rising sun. So when we are nice and low, we can kind of grasp the sun in our hands. And then when we sweep it tall, we bring that sun up. And the arms are almost like rays of the sun shining. So you can think that however works for you. And sometimes we want to move just our arms. Sometimes we want to move just our legs, just depending on what our bodies feel like today. So we're going to do that one more time. We'll finish on that inhale and then just relaxing the arms. So we're going to shift this into our warrior two. I'm going to turn my left toes towards that shorter end of the mat. We did warrior two last week as well. Go ahead and bend that left knee. Find that foundation, root into our feet, create our stability nice and low. And then if you'd like to extend your arms, you can. Try to stack our shoulders over the hips. Just kind of ease into that space. See how it feels. And then we're going to move this into our side angle. So in side angle, we'll rest the hand or the forearm on that leg. We don't want all of our weight to go in it because we still want to keep using that back leg as a foundation. So if you would think about lifting, would your body still be able to stay in the position that you're in? And then we're just going to create some gentle flowing movement with the other arm. So it can be high. You can circle. You can do figure eights. It can be low. Just kind of see how it feels to move in a little different way. And then we're going to take this back into our warrior two. We also have the option, I'm kind of facing the camera just for ease with my voice. You're always welcome to just kind of settle your gaze right over the fingertips that are over that bent knee. I'll pause for just a second. It sent me some kind of message. I need to figure out what it's saying. Okay, so we are going to go back, to that warrior two. And we're going to take this into our reverse warrior. So we'll let our right hand just kind of rest, and our left arm is going to reach tall to the sky. And again, if you'd like to take the gaze up to watch those fingers, you are welcome to do so. But if it feels better in your body, you can keep your gaze right out in front. And we're going to take this back to our warrior two. It's kind of our foundation pose. That's where we're going to keep returning to. And then we're going to go ahead and pivot our whole body. And so that's going to allow both of our feet, our knees, our hips to turn towards like a shorter edge of your mat. So that kind of has now become our front, just for the time being. We'll switch it up here in just a minute. If you would like to stay nice and tall, you can. If you want to sink a little deeper, you can move into like a lower lunge. If you do move into a lower lunge, just be mindful of that bent knee. Make sure it's protected by staying above or behind the ankle. When it gets out in front, we can compromise our joint. Be nice and stable there. And then if it feels good, I'm going to bring the opposite arm up. So I have my left knee bent. So I'm going to bring my right arm just kind of up and over, little stretch. And then we'll let that arm go. And again, just maybe kind of some gentle, flowy, watery movements. See what feels good. And then we're going to lift up. So if you want to bring your hands down, curl your toes under, we'll come back into that more of an upright position. And then we're going to open back to that long edge where we started. Back into our sunflowers, if you like that. You just want to breathe in stillness, you can do that as well. And again, we'll meet on that inhale. We'll take a nice big breath here. With our exhale, we'll kind of relax our arms gently, finding warrior two on the opposite side. So this time, right toes turning towards the short edge, right knee bending, arms can extend if you'd like. Create that nice foundation, strong, active feet. And then we'll go ahead and we will let that right hand, it will start to rest. Remembering that we just want to be able to slide the arm off and still stay upright. And our top arm can reach. We can flow a little bit, add some movement that feels good. And then we'll use an inhale to come back to our warrior two. And then that's going to lead us into our reverse warrior on this side. So our left hand will rest, our right arm's going to reach, our gaze might come up, we might keep it out in front. And then returning to our warrior two. And this is where, again, we're going to kind of pivot everything towards that right side. If you'd like to stay upright, you can. Again, this is where we can choose to add flowing movement or kind of reach with the opposite arm. My right knee's bent, my left arm's going to reach, or you could come down to the earth. If you wanted to practice kind of that lower lunge, you can do those same options here. And then when you're ready, we'll go ahead and bring hands back to the earth. Curl the toes under, start to lift, coming back into that upright position. We're going to open back into our wide-legged stance. And then we are going to go ahead and turn to one direction. So you can pick which side you want. We're going to come into that warrior three, which we practiced last week. So continuing to offer ourselves a little opportunity here. So we're going to turn, finding just kind of a nice upright position, long legs. You want to lunge a little bit, you can. I'm turned to my right, so my right leg is going to be my front leg here. And if you want to think about melting the torso down first, some people prefer to move forward beginning. Some people prefer to lift their leg to start, and then that kind of carries them over. So in that warrior three, again, we have so many options with our arms. They can be supported by a wall or a table. They can rest at our heart. And then if we did lift that back foot, we'll take our time just kind of bringing it back down. We'll open back to the long edge again. And we're just going to shift that to the other side. So when you're ready, rotating, maybe finding lunge, maybe keeping both legs nice and long. And you can choose how you'd like to move into it. Maybe the torso moves first. Maybe the leg lifts first. Usually one side will feel a little more accessible than the other. So just be mindful of how those sides feel different in your body. And then again, just take our time easing from the pose, coming back to center. And then we are going to melt into a nice, easy fold here. So if you'd like to let your head hang heavy, you can allow your arms to dangle, head to relax. So we feel like a little swaying, flowing movement here. And then we'll go ahead and come back into that upright position. And we're going to make our way to the floor here. Lots of ways to do that if you wanted to come back to a fold and then maybe move into all fours. We can even practice our child's pose here, which is a great pose to really trigger that parasympathetic nervous system. Kind of sinking back, melting if it feels good, knowing this pose looks different for everybody. And then we're going to press up. And we're going to move on to a seated position. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my chair just so I can demonstrate this a little bit better. You are welcome to sit against a wall or chair, or you can just sit on the floor. It will be totally fine. So we're going to practice what we call our cradle the baby. So remembering too, we all have different bodies. If you're a teen, probably have a lot more flexibility than somebody at my age, but just kind of embracing whatever feels good in your body today. So we are going to draw one leg in. I'm going to bring my left leg in first. And then we just kind of pretend we're holding that leg like we would hold a baby. And if you're in a position where it's okay, you can rock a little bit here. If my right knee's bent because I'm seated, but you could have it nice and long. And some people like to hold the outside. Some people kind of like to hold it underneath. You're going to feel a little space kind of moving into that hip. That's why we want to get our hips nice and warm. And let's maybe come back into that counting breath here if you're able. If you can remember the counts that you used. And we'll again just maybe match them. Maybe inhale 3, exhale 3, or 4, or 5. And then we'll let that side go. Feel free to shake it out. And then switching. So remembering, it can look and feel totally different. So we'll take our time drawing the opposite leg in, cradling the baby here. Remembering we can bend or extend that opposite leg. Maybe get back into our counting breath. So in yoga, a lot of times we'll refer to our hips as the junk drawer. We can store a lot of tension, anxiety, things like that there. So offering them some movement can be a great way to nourish them. And we're going to let that go. Feel free to shake it out. So if you're comfortable doing so, and this is what I would do if I wasn't trying to have my voice project better, we're going to go ahead and move to our backs. So you can take your time moving it there if you're not already there. So we're lying on the floor, we're lying on our backs. And what we'll do is go ahead and walk the feet in a little bit. And we're going to sway our knees gently from side to side. Mine aren't quite as visible here, but I am sitting up. And you could certainly do this from a chair. It's just a little gentle twisting, rocking movements. See if you can feel that connection with the feet. And if you're on the floor, you can decide how big that movement becomes. We call these windshield wipers. So we'll do that a couple more times. And then we're going to make our way to our final relaxation. So I'm going to stay in my chair so I can offer you a little guided relaxation. You are welcome to sit in a chair, to lie down, to use any props, blankets, anything you'd like for support. And just so you know, we're going to just kind of wrap up our session after this guided relaxation. So if you would like to stay there, you are welcome to do so. I will end the call and you can stay there as long as you'd like. So I want you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And even if you don't move physically, we're going to start to imagine we were floating. Just kind of moving gently with the waves. Maybe rocking side to side. And your imagination can take you a lot of places. You can float in a beautiful swimming pool. You can be floating in the ocean, floating down a river. You can be floating all by yourself or using a raft, a float. You can be floating in a boat. And just allowing ourselves that experience of letting go of anything else that is keeping us from finding rest and relaxation. Connecting with our breath, noticing how it feels. And then we're going to move from here into a breath work that we call 4-7-8. So it's really good for relaxation. It's one you'd want to practice if you were trying to help yourself fall asleep at night or just needed some rest. So what we do is we inhale for a count of 4, we hold for a count of 7, and we exhale a count of 8. So I'll just cue you through the breath work. I'm not going to actually count out loud, but you're welcome to do that on your own. We're going to do 3 rounds of it. And then you are welcome to stay in your Shavasana practice as long as you'd like. So when you're ready, we are going to go ahead and inhale. We're going to hold. We're going to exhale. We'll inhale. We'll hold. And we'll exhale. One last round. Inhale. Hold. And exhale.